Hey, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It is Sunday, July 7th, 2024. Norm in London, Mike in Buffalo. We're going to do a short show today, and then we'll let you get on your way. Mr. Augello, where do you want to start? The names Marner, Hakanpaa, Robertson, Treliving all come to mind for a whole assortment of reasons. Let's start with Mitch Marner. What's the latest on him?
Well, I mean, the latest is there is nothing, and that I think speaks volumes because, I mean, every time Brad Treliving is asked about Mitch Marner, it's complimentary in the sense that he's a great player, he's a star, but he doesn't answer the question. He doesn't answer, well, what's going on with? Are you speaking to Darren Ferris about a contract extension? Are you speaking to Darren Ferris about a potential trade? Maybe that's just being a good GM in a sense of keeping, those conversations in house, but it doesn't stop the speculation from popping out. We saw Nick Kypreos sometime in the last few days, and he occasionally writes a column in the Toronto Star. And apparently the report that he had was that Ryan O'Reilly, former Leaf Ryan O'Reilly, had approached Barry Trotz in Nashville before free agency started on July 1 to see if they could explore a Marner deal, but instead they went and bid on and got Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea. So they shot their wad in free agency, so that they're out. There have been reports, Frank Cervalli has reported, that Vegas may be interested in Marner after losing Marchessault, after losing Chandler Stevenson. So they're a little like, okay, this team might be interested, that team might be interested, but there's nothing really concrete. And I think that obviously Treliving, if he said, well, yeah, we're discussing that, then he loses leverage. Because then there's a sense of maybe, well, they've got to move this guy because publicly it makes a lot of sense for Treliving to say we're fully prepared to bring Mitch back next year. We think he's a great player. By saying he's a great player, that increases his or keeps his value high. But again, and I think the overall theme of what we're doing this morning is where do we go from here, and did they do enough? And if they don't move Mitch Marner, and if they don't do anything to the core group, then it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's the same BS all over again.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. July brings with it more amazing programs, whether on finance, lease. The interest rates on many model lines are next to nothing. Think about how high interest rates are for you right now in terms of mortgages, loans, and stuff like that. You buy new from Ford, it's a low interest rate. Plus, I will incentivize whatever you do. Norm at Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram is where you're going to reach me. I'd like to see a few more followers. It's nice to have the OGs and converts with us this morning. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. There doesn't seem to be an obvious suitor for Mitch Marner, though, Mike, right? I mean, there are all kinds of implications that, or how much are they going to give back? What are the Leafs prepared to take in terms of a haircut with the overall package due to Marner's ability? And, how would you, weigh out what you're receiving in return versus what you're giving away? But it's not like there are 5 or 6 evident suitors for Marner, teams that could really use him and that have indicated in the past that they would like a player like that. So, I mean, it takes 2 to tango. Ideally, the Leafs would like to move this guy on and minimize the damage of return coming back to Toronto. But you have to have some teams that are willing and capable of taking on a Mitch Marner. And, whether everything is quiet and there are all kinds of rumblings under the surface that we don't know about, or really there are no teams that are interested or really have the ability to take on a player like that. It is concerning for sure. And what it makes me feel like is that we're just going to kick it down the road and Mitch Marner will indeed be a part of this team when the puck drops in October.
Well, it's 2 factors. It's cost and cost.
Right.
It's the cost of Marner's contract at $10.9 million, and the whole purpose of trading him is clearing that $10.9 million. But the thing is, now all the 85-90% of the free agents have been traded or have been signed. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what are you clearing it for? I mean, now in a trade, you're obviously getting salary back. I mean, it would be more of a hockey deal. And as we've known over the last few years, hockey deals are more difficult to pull off. Now, it is summer. The cap is 10%, you have some flexibility, 10% over in the off season. A team conceivably with less than 10.9 million in cap space could trade for Marner and then move pieces out before.
But they really got to want the player.
They really got to want the player. But there is a lot to want there. I mean, I know that Toronto fans have soured on Marner because of the way he's performed in the playoffs. But he's a top 15, top 20 forward in this league. I mean, if Treliving does not get a value in return consistent with that type of player, then yeah, I mean, it would be a disservice to trade him just for the sake of trading him, because this team does need to make the playoffs. But again, my issue here is they had an opportunity before free agency on July 1st. Now, possibly there is a market for the teams that failed to get the Stamkoses, that failed to get, players like Martin Necas, who still hasn't been traded from Carolina. I mean, things could fall out during the summer where Marner was option B or C, and now he might be option A. But I don't think you're going to see a situation where 6 teams are going to be battling over Mitch Marner. It's going to be probably 2, and it's probably and will the Leafs get everything that they're asking for? Probably not. But I just think that if you come back with the team that you had, what the result will be. Yeah,
yes and no. It's very complicated, this whole process, and the path of least resistance may be the way this thing ultimately plays out. He returns, he puts up another 90-plus points, he deals with the booze, and then some days it's going to be a guy that will look like a downtrodden hero who's being beat up by the masses and probably doesn't deserve it, and then he will be a guy who is a bit of a pincushion, but 80, 90 points, team gets into the playoffs, they make it a round or 2, then he walks in free agency, he goes where he wants. The Leafs now have a whole bunch of money they can reallocate. The path of least resistance is where this thing may indeed end up. Only time will tell. Interesting comment here from KPG. New to the show, my friend. If you are, like the content, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for being here. If you are a frequenter of the Leafs Convo and I just haven't seen your name, my apologies. Thanks for being here. Same BS and kick it down the road is a Lint Canadian ownership and management. A competitive U.S. franchise would have made big decisions and moves in 2021, the summer of 2021. Oh, not Toronto. Is he onto something there?
Well, I don't know about I don't know about that for the one simple fact that maybe U.S. franchises are more worried about the bottom dollar in terms of support from their fan base, and Toronto maybe. I mean, KPG may be right that they're comfortable. They know that they're guaranteed their profit margins, but Keith Pelly, who's coming in as the new president of the or the new overseer of MLS&E, he was pretty clear. He wants this team to win, and he knows, he feels and reflects the frustration of the fan base. It's just a question of what is the best course to do that. And again, if they trade Mitch Marner for a first round pick and a prospect, people are not going to be happy. Now, the thing is that affects the bottom line in the sense that, they will have a tough time making the playoffs in a very competitive Eastern Conference. So if they can make a deal that is, constructive, right, then they should do it. Now, I'll just say this, and then we'll move on from this. Last year, we had the Nylander situation. Last year, there was a hue and cry from myself and a number of people covered this team that they needed to make a move and they didn't make the move. Okay. Nylander shot that down early in the season with that positive streak that he had and playing as well as he did. this is not going to go the same way.
No.
I mean, unless Mitch Marner, lights it up, the dogs will be on him. He'll be questioned every day. I don't care if he says, I'm only going to answer these questions once. Baloney. People will ask him. And so every media availability, he'll be asked in some inventive way, will you waive your no trade clause, or where is this team going, or what is the status of your contract? I mean, it's going to be an ongoing thing, and not only him being asked, the drone of everybody who covers this team and the fans on social media will be incessant. So if you think this is going away, it's not. And if Mitch Marner wants to go through a year of hell, which
right.
I think he will, even if he plays well, because there'll still be questions.
Right. But what will the questions be, though? Really, it's if the Toronto intelligentsia and all of your cohorts down there really think they're smart, they should know that this is not an easy transaction to make. Would it simply be asking him to apply a quiet, or not a quiet, but a loud underlying pressure to, I don't know, have the guy jump off a building, or do something to hurt him? It's like, I don't, and I'm being facetious, but what are the questions going to be about, really? Like, this is a very, very difficult process to either unwind or tie up. And if you know the game and you understand the implications, what would the questions really be about? Like, Mitch, can you stand the heat, and why have you not called management to have you traded, when we all know that that's just not an easy thing to do? Like, I'm wondering what the questions will be about and what the pressure will entail, Mike.
Well, the negotiations on anything are a two-way street. And in this instance, even a trade is a two-way street, because he has a no-move clause. And the Leafs have said, well, we're not only going to approach him if we have a deal in place that is something that we want to do. So in the instance of that, or not, and that if that doesn't happen, then they won't even approach him. But the thing here is that we don't know publicly whether the Leafs want to trade him.
Right.
They've said, we want to make change. Well, it's a process of elimination. They're not trading Marner, or not trading Matthews. They're not trading Nylander. They can't trade Riley or Tavares with their no-move clauses. So it's down to Marner. And, if he doesn't want to go anywhere, he's not going to go anywhere. So, I mean, the question to him is, are you willing to be traded? He's already said, well, I want to stay in Toronto. Okay, well, if Toronto doesn't want to sign you to an extension, do you want to stay in Toronto? Because honestly, he loses $10 to $12 million in a year on a long-term deal if he stays. So, I mean, there are questions to be asked to Brad Treliving, and there are questions to be asked to Mitch Marner, and they will continue through this season, and up until the trade deadline. So that's where we go.
I'm wondering too, if this whole process ends up devaluing Marner and works against Darren Ferris and that whole group representing the player, right? They believe, based on the stats he's put up, he's worth a certain amount of money, and you weigh it out against other guys who eclipse these levels of compensation. Maybe he hits the free agency market and no one wants to pay him that kind of coin, and the stigma of the last year and a bit being so negative would work against him. Mitch Marner will certainly be one of the Leafs' great anti-heroes of all time, and I'm going to guarantee that, regardless of what happens. Deadly Dad Gaming, what is that hat you're wearing, sir? London Werewolves. Okay, there was a semi-pro team in London, 25 years ago, 2001.
It looks like a Florida Panthers hat.
Right. Well, it's certainly not a Florida Panthers hat, but it's the London Werewolves logo from that era. However, in my men's baseball league, we have dusted it off, and it has been unearthed as part of our look. So I just really, really like the hat a lot. So, we've solved nothing regarding Mitch Marner. Maybe one day we wake up and we hear news that none of us expected. I'm betting on the path of least resistance. He returns, plays out the string, and both teams both parties go their separate ways eventually. Let's roll through this really quick. Nick Robertson still wants to trade.
He still wants to trade, but I think his leverage is basically non-existent. Remember, he's coming off his ELC. I think his problems with the Leafs organization are justified in the sense that, early on in his career and up until last year, durability was the issue.
Right. Last
year, clearly he produced, I think it was 14 or 15 goals in limited ice time, or I think he averaged less than 11 minutes a night. He is basically like, I want a bigger opportunity and they're not giving it to me. So, if I don't want to play for this team any longer, well, and he also reads the writing on the wall in the sense that Craig Berube is probably going to want a team that is more, bigger, tougher, more defensively tenacious, more accountable. And he's an offensive guy. He's a sniper. So, I think he's reading the landscape and saying, okay, this is not going to work. Maybe we should but at this point, they're not going to get value for him unless there's a team offering up a comparably aged, comparably thought of prospect on defense, or even a forward, or a reasonably high draft pick. So I think where it's going to end up, because he's, nobody's offer sheeting him. No, he can't go anywhere unless he wants to go to Europe. And even if they do that, he doesn't burn any, he's still locked into the Leafs. If he goes someplace else and then tries to come back, they still owes them time. So I have a feeling that probably, closer to September in training camp, he signs a 1-year deal. And, then hopefully he gets an opportunity with Craig Berube. And if that's the case, then he does increase his value. I think he's still a player that has a chance to make a difference, right. But I understand his frustration.
Well, there are two things going on. He wants to do a whole bunch of things, and the Leafs have a player under control that they probably have an idea will produce in a way. If the Leafs don't want to facilitate more opportunity for this guy because they believe he's just a part of the plan, they're missing out on a player who could flourish. Right. On the flip side, Nick Robertson wants opportunity. Go take a job. Go take a job in the preseason. Go take a job in the preseason. Play really, really well and look really, really good. If you only get 6, 7, 8 minutes a game, that'll be on the coaching staff. Right, and the fan base will let it be known that it believes that Nick Robertson isn't getting a fair shake. So, he's still young. And you sign a contract. You sign a contract for a reason. The team has control, and you're committed to that club. He just doesn't have enough leverage to be able to fully demand a trade and have the team react, knowing that there's a whole host of organizations that would love to get their hands on this guy. That said, maybe it quietly resolves itself with a transaction. If not, he can come back and try to earn a job. He's certainly got the talent too. And hey, the Leafs really can't be ingrained in anyone right now. It's who wants to come and who wants to be a great player for this team. And we shall see how that shakes out. Yanni Hakanpaa. So the Leafs medical staff said A-OK to that degenerative knee condition that he's dealing with, believing that he'd still be able to come and pull his weight. But there are some concern there. Mike, what's your take on it?
Well, there isn't really any clarity here because,
right.
It's tough. For the way Brian Burke described it, and, obviously he was a longtime GM and president in the NHL. Teams do a end of season physical review of the player. And they provide that to the other teams out there. I don't know if it's every team, but for every free agent. But it's not like they brought Yanni Hakanpaa in on June 30th to do a medical. So we don't exactly know if they just reviewed what Dallas did at the end of the season. Remember, he missed the last month of the regular season and all the playoffs with this knee injury.
What is it with big European defensemen coming over to Toronto from Dallas?
But see, in this instance, curiously, the Leafs have not announced the signing. It was reported, but it hasn't been officially announced by.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think that if they believe that he is already injured, that there would be a mechanism there to void the deal.
Okay.
So I mean, and they're right up against the cap. If they don't think he can play, if they think he can play like early in the season and this is just something he can recover from, then I think they'll stick with it. If it's something that's degenerative and it's bone on bone, as Steve Simmons reported early in the week, then and there is no benefit for him to sign him and then put him on LTIR. They don't want to go into LTIR. They can accrue. Now I'm not a capologist, but they can accrue cap space if they're under LTIR or not in LTIR at the beginning of the season and through the season. So they don't want to go out and trade for Carey Price and put $10.5 million on LTIR. There's no benefit for them doing that. They think there's a benefit going the other way, and they've just crawled out from underneath that with all the Matt Murray and Jake Muzzin and all the other LTIR situations. So I think that if he can't play, then you'll probably see something down the line where the contract is voided. But it's curious that they haven't announced.
What do you think he would have meant to the lineup?
Well, I'm hoping he still means. I mean, I think he's somebody who mixes in on the bottom pairing, and he is a excellent penalty killing defenseman. Somebody who clears the front of the net. He's big. He's rangy. I mean, I've mentioned Hakanpaa on more than a few shows going back, and that he's the type of defenseman. Not he's never going to score a ton. He's not really mobile, but you see these guys on other teams that are just mean bastards, and they clear the front of the net. And you need that. And if you could find that in a bottom pairing role where a guy plays 15, 16 minutes a night and can do that on the penalty kill and not burn out your top guys, that's a valuable commodity.
Right, and he would have been a guy, and it still may be, who was brought over within a flurry of Treliving moves that will be scrutinized, lauded, applauded, praised, ridiculed over the next several months, depending on how the guys he acquired perform. We'll wrap it up with a question: has Brad Treliving done enough to augment this roster, improve it, make it better for the days, weeks, months, and all of the trials and tribulations to come?
Well, okay, if you go defensively, I think he's improved them. Is it enough? We won't know until the season, but I think Tanev is an improvement. Ekman-Larsson, there are some people who say, well, that contract is a year too long, but that's what you do in free agency. You have to give more term or more money. The cap hit is reasonable. The knowledge of the player is, vast. Treliving knows him from Arizona. Shane Doan is part of Leafs management, knows Ekman-Larsson very well. He played really well in Florida last year. So I think there's some gas in the tank there. Whether it's 4 years of gas, we don't know. Tanev is, I think, is a great compliment to Riley, so that immediately improves the top pairing. Hakanpaa, obviously. Goaltending, I'm not pleased. I don't think that Anthony Stolarz is the answer. I think he's a backup. I mean, you're putting a lot of emphasis on Joseph Woll, and I don't have a problem with that, but it's not consistent with what Brad Treliving said. He said he was concerned with Joseph Woll and his injury history, and I'm sure that he's doing something different in the offseason in terms of working.
What about Matt Murray? He's also back.
Well, I don't have a problem with that in terms of him being like a standby number 3, like Martin Jones was. If you want Matt Murray to be sort of like a goaltender coach, unofficially, because
are you saying if he's fully healthy, he's got nothing left?
I think they're saying he's fully recovered from the double hip surgery.
Could he still not be a good goaltender? The guy was all world a few years ago.
I know, but I mean, his problem is he has not been able to stay healthy. I mean, if you're depending on him for a spurt like last year where Martin Jones played 15 games or whatever it was in December and early January until Samsonov got on track, he might be able to do that, and that's a good insurance policy at less than $1 million. So that's fine. I just don't know in terms of viability of him like stepping in and being the number 1. I think those days are past. Now, where I think the Leafs have sort of fallen short is up front. I mean, they re-signed Domi. They could not pay Bertuzzi because they had to apply money to defense, and they really haven't replaced Bertuzzi. So, I mean, if terms are, are you saying now that Matthew Nyes is a top 6 winger? Are you, moving Bobby McMahon? But right now, there is not an answer. Now there might be somebody like still in free agency who they can get on one of those, Leaf discount veteran minimum deals like a Jason Spezza or like a Mark Giordano. But I haven't seen, the evidence of who that is. And right now, I think, you've lost 20 goals with Bertuzzi. I mean, are you expecting Nyes or one of these guys to step up into that top 6 role and produce more? Are you leaving space for Easton Cowan or Fraser Minton or Robertson to take a bit bigger? There's a lot of question whether they're as good or better up front. I don't think they're better. I think they're actually not worse, but I think there is something missing there, and if they trade Marner, that means they have to get something in return that's going to help them.
You can only bring in so many guys. The rest is up to the internal components to fill the spots, fill the voids, to grab those opportunities. It'll be intriguing to watch. Mr. Augello, what are you writing about right now and where?
At Hockey Buzz, basically, it's going to be tomorrow. We'll be looking at the sort of end result of the Leafs development camp, and we're starting to get into the dog days of summer. So at some point this month, we'll start our top 40 prospects. Look at each of the prospects in the Leaf organization, and there are some. It's not the deepest organization, but there are some players that down the road can be impactful.
You can find Mike just about anywhere. He's the best in the business. I'm at Oak Ridge Ford, at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. Norman.james at oakridgeford.com is how you can email me. Lots of OGs and converts do reach out to me weekly regarding car issues, wanting to know more about leasing, financing, what values I can put on their 2011 Honda Civic. Thank you for reaching out to me. It means a lot. The more you do for our sponsor, the more our sponsor will do for us. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. The Sunday Spectacular has been a good one, and we have more to come throughout the dog days of summer leading into the fall training camp, preseason, and then another season of Toronto Maple Leaf hockey. Mike, I got to get out of here. I hope you have a great, great, great day in beautiful Buffalo, New York, and I'm headed to Saginaw, Michigan next week for another baseball tournament. I always love it when I'm down in the good old US of A. For Mike Augello, I'm Norm James. Have a good one. The Leafs Convo is out.